The TCU Horned Frogs are 10-0. They took down the mighty Texas Longhorns. 7.5 point dogs. TCU got it done. We'll react to it next on Locked On Horned Frogs.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, it is Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. I'm Steven Simcox. I'm joined by Matt Jennings. Matt was out last week, and if you didn't see the Texas Tech video last Monday, I shared that it was because Matt and his wife were in the process of welcoming a little girl into the world. And the good news is that all went smoothly, and the Jennings family is doing well. So, Matt, how are you guys? And we're happy to have you back at it today.
Thanks for having me, man. No, we're good. It's been an exciting week, an eventful week, but we're now a family of four, two little girls, and enjoying some time off to get to spend with the family. So it's been a great week, amplified, or just a cherry on top with the fact of TCU going into Austin and beating Texas for the fifth time in 6 tries and 8 times since joining the league.
Yep. It's been pretty amazing. So my newborn, who is now 2 months old, he has never experienced a TCU loss. Your new baby, of course, has never experienced a TCU loss. Undefeated. The Frogs went down to Austin and they won. And so we'll start with this. And I shared this yesterday kind of in like my reaction video, and I'll try to articulate this in a way that makes sense. I think it's hard to describe this team to people who don't watch them on a weekly basis. And I noticed this. Greg McElroy said this during game day Saturday. He was sort of like, oh, yeah, this TCU team, they're flashy, and they're going to face a Texas team tonight that is the most physical team they've seen all year. And, like, I get that sentiment because, yeah, they're a Sonny Dykes led group. They're an air raid team at heart. But it's weird. It's like, Kendre Miller has kind of become their MVP the last 4 or 5 weeks. I think they're at their best when they're running between the tackles on offense, which is not what I would have guessed before the season started. And they just have this mental toughness and like ability to make plays that is something they didn't do the last few years, like at all. That's not how you would describe them. But after that horrific like fumble that Max had where the game was over and suddenly at 17-10, it's like, all right, you got to get a couple first downs to close this out. And the stadium was rocking again. They did it. And like, I don't know, Matt, I think like they want the game to kind of be a street fight. Like they revel in this idea of like, we're going to lean on you and win games in the second half and win games in the fourth quarter. Does any of this make sense? What I'm talking about with this football team?
100%. And I think you're absolutely right in that the toughness and the resilience to when that fumble happened in the fourth quarter and suddenly you're in a 1-possession game and you have to get first downs to close out the big brand name opponent on the road. You came in as an underdog somehow, right? Even though you're a top 4 team in the country. And a lot of previous TCU teams, in my opinion, probably would not have done well in that situation and probably would have gone 3 and out and had to punt and hoped and prayed for a stop on defense. And they just calmly went forward. And Texas knew exactly what they were going to do. Texas knew that they were going to run the ball between the tackles with Kendre and Amari. They obviously had the one throw on third down to Quentin to kind of that really kind of like, okay, you eased off. But like they knew it was coming. They couldn't stop it anyway because this was a team that was really tough. And that actually this was the game that this was the kind of game that I was dreading for TCU, in that I knew at some point some team was going to be able to just not shut them down on offense, but they were just you have one game a season where it's just a dumpster fire. You're always going to have at least one game per season where just like everything goes wrong for you with regard to the thing that you do really well, right? And this year, the thing that TCU does really well is score a lot of points and have explosive plays. And none of that was working for them. And I was waiting for the game where that happened, and it came back to bite them, because defensively all year they just haven't been great. They've been getting by, but they haven't been great on defense. And so I was waiting for the game where they get into a rock fight with somebody, and then the other team's able to kind of pull away and pour on some points. And the TCU offense didn't have a chance to respond, and the defense just got overwhelmed. That's the thing that that's the worst case scenario that I was waiting for it to happen at some point. And they got into that situation, but the thing that didn't happen was the defense didn't get overwhelmed. The defense was like, cool, I'd love to be in a rock fight. That sounds great. Let's just take it to you. Let's make Quinn Ewers start the game 0 for 7 with an interception. Let's get y'all are going to get after Max Duggan? Great. We're going to get after Quinn Ewers. We're going to make him see ghosts. We're going to make him feel pressure. We're gonna shut down Bijan Robinson. We're gonna shut down your running back that you think should be a Heisman candidate, and then our running back is gonna be the guy who is just barreling through people in the fourth quarter, right? And to your point about like leaning on people, that was the other thing that I think that I've seen from them over the last probably 2-3 games, especially against Tech and Texas, is they don't get away from the run game just because it's maybe not working great in the first half, because it's in the interest of, we're going to lean on you because we know in the fourth quarter all the body blows that we've dealt over the course of the game are going to pay off, and we're going to be able to break off those big runs with Kendra Miller and Amari DeMercado and Amani Bailey and the whole group. And that strategy has paid off over the last couple weeks. And so the fact that they can – this is a roundabout way to get to your point of the fact that they can win in different ways, that they're not one-dimensional, a flashy team that all they do is throw the ball 60 times and whatever and score on 40-yard touchdown passes, that they can grind it out, that they can get into a rock fight, that they revel in it, is something that's really cool to see. That they, to your point, they are a more interesting, more diverse team than I think people give them credit for. And you have to be able to do that if you really are serious about winning a conference title, about finishing the season as a top 10, a top 5 team. I don't want to say the P word, but get yourself into contention for that field, right? You got to be able to win games off your normal script. And they've been able to do that for a couple of weeks. And that's been really encouraging to see.
And so defensively, they were just incredible last night. I mean, held Texas to 3 points. And it is really fascinating. Like, part of this is Sark. And I mean, like, he'll have to live with this and whatever his decision making is, but it is crazy. They were so good against the run and against Bijan that, like, he just said, "Oh, I'm not going to give the ball to the best running back in college football anymore."
They gave up. They gave up like,
on
it. Screw it. Let's
and it wasn't like
12
Quinn was lighting it up.
He ran the ball like 30 times last year in this game.
I know. And he just ran over K-State, which has a really, really good defense. Like, that's what they're known for. And it wasn't like Quinn was like lighting it up and they just said, "Oh, we're getting so much in the passing game, like Worthy and Sanders and all these guys are going off." It was that literally it was so ineffective that they said, "Okay, well, we'll just try the passing game and hope that maybe we hit one of these downfield shots, or maybe one of our tight ends breaks a tackle and gets in scoring position." But I want to start with the linebackers, because that's a position I don't think we've talked about a ton this year. Shad Banks had to play in the absence of D. Winters in the first half, and he was fantastic. I mean, they've kind of stumbled upon, like, he's a legit contributor. D. Winters came in and did a nice job. Jamoy Hodge has, like, morphed into a really intimidating presence. He runs around with his, like, Zeke crop top, and he's just jacked, and he looks the part. He had a huge stop on 4th down on that first series. And then, like, Johnny Hodges, the Naval Academy transfer, is arguably maybe the most important addition to this team. He's leading the team in tackles. He was incredible last night. So I'll let you kind of take your pick to what you want to react from. But that's not a group with a ton of depth. Like, it's crucial that they get big time contributions from the 4 or 5 guys they're going to play. And at the moment, like, they have 4 starters, which is a really cool development for that defense.
Yeah, they came through in a huge way, both in terms of bottling up Bijan. They were a huge part of that. Johnny Hodges especially was a huge part of that. And then they've also, like, in spots made huge plays as, situational pass rushers or in coverage. And they all have, like, weaknesses, right? Like, Jamoy, I think, can be a little bit of a highlight seeker, and so, like, doesn't always have the best tackling form, but he wants to lay a big hit. Johnny Hodges, I think, is a phenomenal at playing at making his run fits and wrapping up, but like, I get nervous anytime they ask him to do anything more than, like, play the flat in coverage, right? Shad Banks is a little bit of a kind of still a little bit of an unknown quantity because they just keep giving him spot reps. Yesterday or Saturday night was his, most extended playing time we got to see him get. And he's still a younger player, still figuring some stuff out. And so, like, it's a flawed group, but it's a group that, along with the whole defense, they've gotten better over the course of the whole season, in particular over the last month. They've just, a whole lot of credit to Joe Gillespie. Like, they've been just slowly making improvement over the course of the season. In year one, in a new scheme, with a new coordinator, with a lot of new faces on that side of the ball. And they've just, as they've steadily gotten better at the exact right time where, okay, opposing defenses are figuring some stuff out and counterpunching to what the offense do, where they're not lighting up the scoreboard as much as they were earlier on in the season. They haven't been hurt as much by that because the defense has made the strides that they need to. And you saw that on Saturday. The one play that weirdly stuck out to me the most, but just in terms of, like, effort and fire and, like, the intangible buzzwords that I hate, but Texas in the red zone, and Quinn Ewers had that bobbled ball, and Shad Banks flying in there head first, like, trying to recover the fumble, didn't come up with it, and I was honestly shocked that he didn't. But just, like, that level of see ball, get ball, I'm gonna fly through here and I'm gonna make a play, from a group that, to your point, has been really kind of like, there was a lot of concern, especially with the injuries earlier on in the season. You lose Marcel Brooks, and you lose Terrence Cooks, and you lose Thomas Armstrong. Like they're thin there. And the fact that they've got guys flying around, making big plays in a big moment, especially again in one of your biggest games of the year, when your offense is not doing everything that it normally does, monumental, and was really cool to see. And it gives you a little more confidence getting later on into the season, where you are getting, again, they're playing 10 straight games without a break. The fact that they're gaining steam at this point on that side of the ball is really incredible.
So we'll kind of wrap 2 things into one here, because I know you had a point about kind of the secondary in this team and some of the QBs they faced, but the secondary was really good last night. I mean, THT and Josh Newton, it's been rocky at times, but I think Travius especially, like, I'd say since the SMU game, probably has just been pretty lights out. Josh had some good moments yesterday. Like, Xavier Worthy is a really good wide receiver. Jatavian Sanders is a freak, like, from Denton Ryan. He played defensive end in high school. He's a tight end now. Jordan Whittington was, like, the one guy that kind of hurt them in some different situations Saturday, but overall played really well. Bud Clark has come on in a big way. Nuke Bradford's healthy, which has been huge. But they were fantastic. And I have not watched a lot of Quinn Ewers this year. That was a rough performance for him Saturday night. And, I mean, I'm not going to come out with a hot take about it. Like, he's a true freshman. He skipped his senior year at South Lake Carroll. So this is technically, like, his first year in college, even though he was at Ohio State last year. But I mean, he just looked incredibly uncomfortable, and a lot of that was credit to the TCU defense. But I was surprised. You never even really got a flash of, okay, yeah, you see why there is all this hype around him. But I guess, Matt, like, your thoughts about the performance by the defensive backs yesterday, and then Quinn's struggles, and kind of how that's been a theme in some ways for this TCU defense.
Yeah, I've kind of joked at times, and probably unfairly this season, that the TCU secondary this season has been like Trey Tomlinson and like a bunch of traffic cones, right? And that's the way it's felt at times. But they showed out in a big way on Saturday, and obviously they were aided by the pass rush, which again, another area of the defense that is gaining steam as the season goes on. Dylan Horton, come get your flowers, man. Like,
Who knew, man? Who knew?
But no, I think Trey has played his way back into being an NFL draft pick after maybe a rough start to the season. I think Josh Newton, because teams throw away from Trey, he gets, targeted just more just by default. And he's going to give up some big plays, but I think he also makes key plays in key moments on the ball. Bud Clark I agree, has grown a lot. They still have breakdowns. Kirk Herbstreit on the broadcast on Saturday pointed out, like, on one of the times Texas got into the red zone, they had Bijan Robinson, running free down the sideline on a wheel route, and Quinn just missed him, and just didn't see him, I should say. And you take that, right? Like, it's just like, if the other team's not executing, then they don't take advantage of your deficiencies, and that's fine. But I do think on the whole they've gotten a lot better. They're playing better together. I think they having Bradford back is huge for them. I think having Abe Kamara as a rotational player rather than having him be a starter is a good spot for you to be in. I will say, to your point, you set me up for this. One, on the Quinn Ewers specifically, this is kind of mean, but I staked out some real estate on Quinn Ewers is actually bad Island, back during when Texas played Oklahoma State. I was just watching. I was like, this is not it, man. This is not it. And people wanted to attribute to the wind, and I was like, okay, but Spencer Sanders is playing in the same wind, and he looks good, and he's also banged up. So, like, I don't know what you want to say. And yeah, I just haven't been impressed thus far with him this season. I think a lot of people's opinions of him are based on like one really awesome quarter before he got hurt against Alabama, an Alabama defense that we're now realizing is like fine, but not like up to Nick Saban's normal caliber, right? And against an Oklahoma and putting up absurd numbers against Oklahoma, which Oklahoma is like an absolute mess on defense in year one under Brent Venables. So to your point, I have yet to see something from Quinn Ewers where I'm like, oh, okay, like, yes, I see what they're building around here, right? Which brings me to a point. Who's the best quarterback that TCU's defense has had to face this season? The reason I ask that question is because they have deficiencies in the secondary, but I think they have been fortunate, and you can't play you play who's on your schedule, right? They've been fortunate that they haven't really had to face a quarterback, in my opinion, with like the accuracy and the command and the arm talent to really make them pay, right? For their deficiencies in the secondary. And again, those deficiencies, it's year one under Gillespie. They were expected. It's fine, and they're making do, and they're making it work. They're a top 40 defense in the country in SP Plus, according to Bill Connolly at ESPN. Phenomenal results in year one, given the circumstances, and given the fact that they were like a bottom 30 defense in the country last year. So, like, I'm not critiquing them at all. I'm merely stating that I am nervous and concerned for, if and when you face a quarterback who can maybe make you pay for some of your mistakes a little bit more. So, like, to my question, like, who's the best one? That, like, I kind of think it's Will Howard for K-State. Like, in terms of like who's the best passer that they've faced, it might be Will Howard.
I don't know. I mean, I think from a complete QB standpoint, it's probably Spencer Sanders, even though I know there's questions about
Right.
how healthy
But
he
he
was.
was banged up, right? Yeah.
Honestly, the first name that came to my mind was Tanner Mordecai.
Yeah. Who did not play well in that game for the most part. Like they did a good job kind of rattling him. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
like that might be the answer. Um, and so to my point, again, I don't really want to say the P word. Maybe we can say the P word after this week, depending what happens against Baylor. Maybe then we can have a conversation. I don't really want to have it yet. But I am beginning to consider and think about, and just like thoughts are coming unbidden to my mind about it. And I'm thinking about playing TCU's defense, trying to match up against or trying to defend against a quarterback. Again, just with more accuracy, with more command, with more arm strength. It makes me nervous, is all that I'm saying. So that's the one thing, that's the one, not critique, but just like reservation that I have coming out of TCU's, let's be clear, best defensive game of the year and looked phenomenal. They gave up 3 points on defense. Like Texas's lone touchdown was a defensive score, right? Looked phenomenal. Bottled up Bijan Robinson, made him a non-factor. Incredible game from them defensively. So not taking away from any of that at all. And ultimately, I think you have to be really happy with where they are in year one under Gillespie for sure.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. They have not been stressed by like just a dead eye quarterback performance. Now, I mean, I'll talk about it openly a little bit. You look at their schedule though. Blake Shapen's sort of a weird case. Really good arm talent. Was a baseball player in high school. Has been kind of up and down this year. Hunter Decker's that Iowa State offense has struggled, even though Xavier Hutchinson's a good wide receiver. And then maybe rematch with Will Howard, who I don't really know like what K-State does because Adrian Martinez is banged up again, but Howard's better. Like, I just think he's a better quarterback at the moment. And then like if we get to the mythical realm, then yeah, we're talking about CJ Stroud and Marvin Harrison Jr. and Jackson Smith and Jaiba if he's healthy. And like that's a problem. But I would also say that's a problem for every team in the country outside of Georgia, right? Like that's
100%,
just
100%.
If you're playing that game, then that's really cool that you're there. And yeah, it's up to Garrett Riley and Max Duggan to find a way to score
To
40
keep up.
points and do your best because those are some dudes. And if you face in the semifinal or in the ultimate game, if you face the future top insurance salesman in Athens, Georgia, Stetson Bennett, then like that's an issue. But I don't think it's so much about Stetson Bennett as it is that they have like two tight ends who are made from a computer and are just
you've got to your point, you have no one on this defense that can cover Brock Bowers or maybe can even tackle him. But to your point, name a defense in the country that does, right?
He's a Pokemon character. Like there's nothing.
And for the record, that is future Stetson Bennett, Kia of Waycross and Blackshear owner. Shout out to the Shutdown Fullcast, Stetson Bennett. But like for real, like he's been great this season. He's been really great. Like
he's been like he juked somebody out of his shoes yesterday. Who did they play? Who did they play Saturday?
Mississippi State. And he moved. He put the defender like into a different dimension. It was really great. No, and like I hate that we're having this conversation. I need to get like lean really hard I need to overcorrect and lean really hard into the reverse strengths and talk about how TCU like you throw the records out in a rivalry game against Baylor and I will say like I have been saying for the last like probably like 5 or 6 weeks I've been expecting TCU to drop 2 games down the stretch. They're running out of games to drop, but this was one of them, right? Like I was expecting them to lose one of Iowa State, Texas Tech, and one of Texas and Baylor. Because going on the road 2 weeks in a row against in-state rivals, big emotional games, probably the 2 games that I would argue probably mean the most to the fan base. I don't know if they mean the most to the team, But beating Texas and beating Baylor, to me, pending SMU like making a really like meteoric rise, these are the two games that mean the most on the schedule to the fans, right? And going on the road to play those two teams back to back is hard. And so I've been expecting them to drop one of these two games. They held serve against Texas, and but I'm nervous about Baylor. So again, I say I'm really hesitant to like engage with the whole mythical realm P word conversation until you get through the Baylor game. If you can get through the Baylor game unscathed, I'm like, okay, let's have the talk, right? But man, it's been such a fun ride. And it's still going, right? Like this is the most fun that we've had. We talked about this after I guess it was after the Oklahoma game, or maybe it was after I don't remember which one it was, but after some of the season, like when's the last time we had this much fun over the course of a TCU season? And like the answer for me is either 2014 or 2015 now. Like we're in that same discussion. The difference being in 2015, you kind of knew defensively, like, oh, like they're just getting by. Like this is smoke and mirrors. Like the bill's going to come due at some point. And it seemed like Saturday was when the bill was going to come due for TCU in 2022. And they answered the bell in a huge way. And that was really, really cool to see. And so now I'm like, I think it's fine. I think it's totally fine to allow ourselves to think about it and to think about what is the ceiling here, because it's fun. It's a really, really fun time.
It definitely is. I want to transition to the offense. I will say, like, yeah, Dylan Horton, kudos to you. He has become a legit pass rushing threat, and they have not had that in multiple seasons now. I mean, really, I guess since like the LJ Collier, Ben Banigou days, they have not had a guy on the edge who can get after the passer. O'Shawn Mathis at times, but Dylan.
O'Shawn Mathis in like one game against Texas, against Henry Colombi. That was really
yeah. O'Shawn did have a good game against Caleb Williams last year,
right,
in Oklahoma. But yes, O'Shawn was king of like, oh, he had 3 sacks against Kansas and 2.5 sacks against Texas Tech. And so at the end of the year, oh man, O'Shawn had 7 sacks. But
it's kind of like that year that Matt Boson was an All-American because he got 5 sacks in the Baylor game at the end
my
of the
God,
season.
riff raff impersonator Matt Boson, or the dude from We're the Millers, the boyfriend from We're the Millers. So offensively, and I'd love to hear from our YouTube commenters if you want to comment on this. So I understand like Gary Patterson was a big part of this. I didn't know like how big of a part of it he would be, but then I saw him on the sidelines with the visor, like yelling instructions and pointing to people, and I said, okay, well he's a massive part of this game. That's what it is. I'm kind of concerned, Matt. Like I know there were some extenuating circumstances. Obviously, the familiarity that the Texas coaching staff had with this team. Texas and Texas Tech have really good defensive lines. But it's pretty obvious to me there's a plan now. Maybe not everybody can execute it, but we're going to heat up Max Duggan in this offensive line and force you to make plays. And so these longer developing crossers and mesh routes are not working. The bubble screens and wide receiver screens are not really working. They were able to finally, get some quick game going like towards the end of the first half, but they have to adjust. Like Andrew Coker and Brandon Coleman have done a serviceable job this year. They've struggled lately, and I would say Max has struggled lately. But they got to figure this out because this passing game right now is it's pretty bad. I mean, honestly, it's just bad.
It's not where it's not where it needs to be. I think you're 100% right. That was what I was thinking after the Texas Tech game was, oh, okay. They've given everybody else the blueprint. Like this is what you do against TCU offensively is you try and get in Max Duggan's face and make him uncomfortable, and you but the key is you have to be able to drop enough guys in coverage where it's like you're not giving up the big plays, right? That TCU is really good at in the passing game. And so you have to be able to drop enough guys, but keep enough guys in the box to both stop the run and pressure Max Duggan. And so there's this really difficult balance. And to your point, who has the personnel to execute that? And Texas, with their defensive line, absolutely did, and they made hay in the first half, especially. I will say I was appreciative of the offense's adjustments, late in the first half and especially going in the second half, in that they stopped trying the bubble screens as much, and they were like, okay, let's try some quick slants more, and let's get the ball out of Max's hands quicker. But not like just to the edge where it's just like, okay, like now you have a defensive back just coming up and making a tackle on Darius Davis behind the line of scrimmage. Like they trusted their personnel, especially Quentin Johnston, to just like win one-on-one matchups and get a quick 6 yards. And like, you can do that, right? And if you're going to do that, and if you have the ability to do that and just get your, continually move down the field, eventually they have to back off. They can't keep pinning their ears back like that, right? And so I appreciate that they made that adjustment in game. I would like to see them anticipate that this is the way teams are going to play you going forward, and come in with a different kind of script just from the jump, right? So that's the one thing I would like to see. But again, I am encouraged by the fact that they didn't abandon the run game, and that they are, while this offensive line can have some struggles in the pass blocking, in terms of run blocking, again, they've done a really good job of leaning on teams and wearing on them over the course of the game, and then breaking open those big gaps for Kendra Miller and Amari DiMercado to exploit late in games. And so they can't get away from that, because I agree with you. It is like the thing that makes them really, really dangerous and makes them multidimensional on offense, right? Rather than just being like, they're a team that goes 4 wide and throws it up to Quentin Johnston, every 3 plays, right? And so I agree. I'm a little concerned. I'm not familiar enough with everybody's personnel to know who can do that sort of plan well going forward. I am a little nervous about Baylor just because of Dave Aranda's his acumen as a defensive coordinator. I think he's going to have been watching the last 2 games and be like, okay, I know what we need to do. And Iowa State, John Heacock, their defensive coordinator, has really done well against TCU historically, and so like that's a game that also makes me nervous. And so like and then as of now, TCU's clinched a spot in the Big 12 title game. As of now, it looks like your opponent's K-State. You got 2 weeks left to where that could change, right? But as of now, it looks like it's K-State. K-State, another team that's got a really good defense, got a great pass rush, could make, and so you could end up in like 3 straight rock fights. I guess it ends up being 4 when you got the Texas game. You could end up in like 4 straight rock fights to end the season. And so how do you adjust your offensive game plan to protect Max a little bit, because he's getting beat up, and exploit what these teams are doing to you? The other thing, and we talked about this earlier on in the season, and then it stopped being as much of an issue, now it's been an issue again, is Max Duggan holding onto the ball too long. He's just holding onto the ball too long. There are times when the pressure gets there really fast and he doesn't have time, but other times where he does have time, and you got to have that clock where it's like, okay, I've made 1, 2, and I get to third read, and I gotta run, man. I gotta get positive yardage here. And there were too many times where he's taking losses, or when the pressure gets to him, he's not stepping up in the pocket, he's backpedaling, and then you make the loss worse, right? And get behind the chains even worse. So those are the things that I want to see from Max Duggan. But I mean, he's been a warrior. He's been fighting through it. He's been fighting through, just like a lot of physical demands on him of his game. So it's hard to critique him too much, but that's the main thing where it's like that could elevate them in a big way if he could make that adjustment.
Yeah, I was also just really impressed with Texas's speed. I mean, on defense, none of those jet sweeps, really any of those kind of horizontal plays were working. Not even they weren't working, like they were just not getting positive yardage. I mean, it was consistently putting them in 2nd and 14, 3rd and 16, those kind of things. So staying ahead of the chains would be big. But let's talk about the MVP of this thing, because Kendre Miller, I mean, it was rough going for him too in the first half. That 75-yard run that he broke off was a game changer. And then again, like closing out the game. He just got a lot of tough yards, got huge first downs. He was the best player on the field last night. I saw in post game, somebody asked him, I think it was Quentin Johnston, who's the beat writer for the 4-Star Telegram, if he was the best running back in the Big 12, and he said emphatically yes, which, heck yeah, man. I mean, believe it. Like, lean into that for sure. It is really impressive, though, Matt, even the last few weeks when the defenses of Tech and Texas have kind of had their number, they've still been able to get back to, okay, we're going to line up and run the ball, and we're going to run the ball, and he's still getting 5 or 6 yards to carry.
Yeah, it's been he has moved into the lead of like probably the most important it was Max Duggan, but he's moved into the lead of being like the most important player on this offense right now. Y'all know me. I'm always of the opinion that it's Miller time. It's been really fun to watch him blossom this season and get the opportunities, right? Because we saw him get him in spots last year, but he was behind Zach Evans in terms of in terms of like order of priority in the pecking order, and they haven't missed a beat from losing their first 5-star recruit ever in school history. It's like, great, that's fine. Like, and no hard feelings. I don't think there was any acrimonious feelings in terms of the split with Zach Evans and TCU. I think he was going for what was best for him, and it's fine. But they have not had a downgrade with Kendra Miller, and I think there's a strong argument that it's been an upgrade in terms of having Kendra Miller be your feature back now, because he's just been so the combination of physicality and speed and quickness and ability to make people miss in space is really incredible. The 75-yard touchdown run was great. Once again, maybe the best play of the game from him that wasn't a touchdown. He did this against K-State too. Was like catching the screen pass, which was like at his shoelaces, by the way. Great hands. Yeah. Looks like it's gonna be a 1-yard loss, and like to Chris Berman noises through like 8 tacklers and turns it into a first down. And it's just like, this guy refuses to be taken down easily. And it's just so fun watching him play. And I am concerned about his workload and just his body. That, they did say at the end of the game on Saturday, they took him out toward the end, just like they did against West Virginia. They were, trying to keep him fresh. He's, I think he's just going to be banged up like through the end of the season. And so him and Quentin Johnston and Max Duggan, like, you just got to manage that somehow. You got to, do your best to, get them in the spots to make the plays they need without overworking them and getting yourself in a tough spot where they're not available. Right. But has been phenomenal this season. Just reading off a couple things here. He has a rushing touchdown in all 10 games this year, which is the second longest streak in school history behind some guy named LaDainian Tomlinson. He's got 11 consecutive games with a rushing touchdown, second all time at TCU behind, again, this guy, LaDainian Tomlinson. His name keeps showing up. He's the first TCU player with 1,000-yard season since Kyle Hicks. It's the most. He's got 1,147 yards on the season, which is the most since Aaron Green in 2015. He's gonna finish with probably at this pace. He's gonna finish with like 1,500, 1,600 yards at this pace, which is wild. You would have told me that any running back would finish with that in a Sonny Dykes Garrett Riley offense at the beginning of the season. I would have told you we were insane. But again, it's a credit to Dykes and Riley for like realizing like, hey, here's what the strength of the team is. Like, we're not going to fit a square peg in a round hole. We're going to play to what our strengths are. And it's just refreshing to see. It's refreshing to see a coaching staff being willing to do that. So it's Miller time. It will always be Miller time. Loving it. He's just so fun, man. He's so fun.
Yeah, and Zach Evans is on his way to another 700-yard season with 45 helmet taps during the year. Always coming out on second down.
Gonna be a draft pick. Gonna go make a lot of money. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, it's going to frustrate me when he goes like 30th overall, but whatever. Maybe he'll be a workhorse back in the NFL. I'm sure he'll turn it on. Anyway, best of luck, bud.
He's saving the tread on the tires for when he's actually getting like actual paychecks from his employer, which like I respect the game, right? It's
sure.
fun.
Yeah, Go ahead. I'm gonna stop talking before I sound like an 80-year-old man. Okay. Best of luck to you, buddy. So yeah, Kendra was fantastic. Another funny development this season. So I was thinking about this yesterday. I feel like Amari DiMercado, who has a PhD because he's been in college for like 7 years, when he comes in the game in the fourth quarter, like Edwin Diaz has that amazing entrance where they start playing like Narcos by I think it's Timmy Trumpet, and he runs in like ba 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 ba. We need that for Amari because he's become the
The
closer,
closer,
the
yeah.
closer, and it's I don't know. I mean, there probably is someone, but I'm not sure if there's a person on the team who has improved more from last year to this year. Like he had 65 yards on 5 carries yesterday, and he just comes in and it's like, oh, here's a fresh new back. And he's gonna run it down our throat. He like I was rewatching this today. He had Anthony Cook in the hole in the fourth quarter, and he's like 2 yards short of the first down. And he like ran him over and pushed him down. I mean, he was like, oh my gosh.
It was double. It was yeah, no, because it was the initial hit stick and the guy's getting thrown to the ground, and then add the insult to injury, just like did the helmet swipe, throwing him to the side to then move forward to get the first out. It was so great. It was so great.
It really is. And like good for him, because I'll tell you, man, like Hendon Hooker, isn't he like 26 years old or something like that? There's some of these
26.
there's some of these guys that are older, and I get it, but it's like if I was in college, like if I was playing college football for 6 years and I was still pretty mid, like I would kind of be depressed about that. But Amari in year 6 is like carved out a really nice role. I'm just happy for him. It's just cool to see
It's
that
awesome.
like he's getting meaningful time, Matt.
It's awesome, and it was one of those things where it's like last year I'd get like really like just like full like to be frank, I would get really like upset when he would get snaps ahead of like Kendre Miller or ahead of Zach Evans, right? Like they'd give him like meaningful snaps and meaningful game time. And I made the joke, I'm like, Amari DiMercado, like he should, like he's your garbage time back, right? He's your, that's what his role is, right? And he has not only he's become their change of pace number 2 close it out back, and it's been really cool. When he broke off that run against Colorado in the opener, I was like, oh, hello Amari, like go for it, dude. Okay. And I thought that was just like, oh, okay, like this is just, he's getting his spot snaps and it's fine. He's carved out a meaningful role for himself, and that's been really cool to see. And he's keeping Amani Bailey like off the field, which is interesting.
Yes.
Which is funny. So that's an interesting dynamic of it. But yeah, the fact that he is improved that much. I'm curious as I would love to like talk to members of the coaching staff and be like, okay, so what's the difference between 21 and 22? I think scheme obviously plays into it. I think they're doing a better job of creating more favorable boxes for the running game with just like the way with their personnel groupings and pre-snap formations and stuff like that. That plays into it. I think the strength program is better, as we've talked about before, so that's probably part of it. But yeah, man, it's so rare that you see just like a player in this late in the career make a significant jump, and it's just fun to see. It's really fun to see.
Yeah, so final thing. Well, I want to close with some laughter, so that'll actually be the final thing. But second to final thing, Quentin Johnston, I do think part of the reason this offense is struggling is because he's not 100%. But that was a performance yesterday. I mean, like you could tell he was not, that ankle's bothering him. He did not have the explosiveness. He only had 3 catches, but 3 catches for 66 yards, had the huge touchdown in the fourth quarter. Yeah, it was a coverage bust, but he still came down with it. Had a nice catch in the first half that honestly should have led to 3 points. Griffin Kell unfortunately missed his first field goal of the year. And then 3rd and 3 with, the game on the line in some ways. If you don't convert, you're into punt. And he went up and makes a great catch on a slant and comes down with the football and gets a first down and essentially seals the football game. But he's a true number 1 receiver, Matt. Like, even if you don't get his best effort, which honestly, since the Oklahoma State game, it's kind of been this way, he still finds a way to get, between 50 and 70 yards and a touchdown, and he's doing it in big moments. So I just was super impressed with the way he got it out on Saturday.
Yeah, it is really impressive to see a guy be able to play through what's obviously like a majorly, at least a seriously nagging injury. That's like, yeah, to your point, he's not 100%. He's not right now, and he's playing through it anyway. And I think also on top of that, he had the drop on one quick slant that would have been a first down, and just like hits his chest and just misses it. And he's usually good for like one of those a game. But the fact that he came back from that and they went back to him, it's like, no worries, we're going to go back to you on 3rd and 3, to your point, with game on the line, and he's going to make that catch and essentially seal the game, is huge. And man, I'm very excited to see what he does at the next level. I think there are obviously things that he can improve on and things that he can get better at, but I think he is getting pretty close to solidifying himself as, I need to look at like the numbers, but he's probably solidified himself, in my opinion, as the second or third best receiver in school history at this point. And in a school history that includes guys like Josh Dotson and Jalen Reagor and Josh Boyce and Jeremy Curley, like that's huge, right? So really, very impressed by him. Want them to be able to continue to get him the ball in a way that's responsible and that is able to take advantage of what he can do even when he's limited. Because he really does. He attracts so much attention. That's the other thing. Is like he tilts the field in a major way that opens things up for guys like Darius Davis and Tay Barber and Savion Williams. I think that's the one. The thing to watch over these last few games of the regular season is, can they get Savion Williams, maybe Jared Wiley, going a little bit more, especially over the middle of the field with the attention that Quentin gets on a regular basis. I think that'll be the thing that might be able to help them mitigate just what his limitations are with that ankle injury.
All right, before we go,
we got to do it. Yeah,
Texas, 7.5 point favorites. Literally, like everyone was picking UT in this game. It kind of started gradually, but then by the end of the week,
it was a flood.
Yeah, I mean, I think Desmond Howard picked TCU, and that was about it. But it was just a foregone conclusion. Like, yeah, UT is going to win. 104,000 people were there. They brought in Arch. They brought Arch in. They said, "Hey, Arch, fly up on your private jet from Louisiana. We got some recruiting to do. We're going to close the deal. All the 2023 guys, all the 2024 guys. They had that big linebacker, I think Anthony Hill Jr., who just decommitted from Texas A&M.
What's his name? The Duncanville defensive end as well, who TCU's in the hunt for him as well. I think it's Colin Simmons. It was also there.
Yeah. And they scored 3 points. I mean, they scored 10 points, but they scored 3 points on offense. It was supposed to be Sark's signature win, Matt.
It's amazing. It's really, really, so to your point, I know I might be wrong. I people tweet at me, put in the comments, like, tell me who I'm missing. I know of 3 national media people who picked TCU. Friend of the pod, Shahan J. Raja, Dennis Dodd, both of whom at CBS Sports, and Desmond Howard on game day. Herb Street, McAfee, Josh Pate, like, go down the list. Everybody was just like, oh, and it was part of this narrative, to your point, of like having TCU being hard to pin down. I think there was this idea of like TCU's like, oh, like they're winning games on flash or by the skin of their teeth, and like, oh, like once they get into this game against a team that has a talent advantage, like they're gonna get shown up and they're gonna be shown as fraudulent, blah blah blah. And it was very, very gratifying to it was very gratifying to completely upend that whole narrative. And to your point, the whole idea of like 104,000 people at DKR, second largest crowd in stadium history. I'm like, okay, y'all, TCU is 5-1 in Austin against Texas in Big 12 play. Like, it's not an intimidating place to play in general. I would just say, like, it's just not. they get up for a big game like they did for TCU, like they did for Alabama earlier on the season. But in general, it is not like a place that teams fear to come play. In fact, it's a place where a lot of teams like to come and play their best ball. We look at what Oklahoma State and Kansas State have done in Austin over the years. Look what BYU did in Austin back in the late Mac Brown era, right? Like, teams love to come play in Austin because teams love to show up. Texas, they love to do it, and TCU especially loves to do it. They're 8-3. I need to say this again. They are 8-3 against Texas since joining the Big 12. They're 5-1 in Austin. They have, and most of the wins that they've gotten against Texas have not been super competitive. On Saturday, obviously, it was competitive for a time, and then with the exception of were it not for a garbage time scoop and score, they were going to lose that game 17-3. Like,
well, and like,
it's incredible.
Yeah.
Like, this is, and they're like, we're going to go off to the SEC where we belong, where we're going to play with other teams that are of our stature. It's like, y'all, you and A&M are the same team, y'all. You're the same team. You're the same hanging out around 7-8 wins every single year and can't get out of your own way, even though you bring in a top 5 class every year team. Like, that's who you are, man. And it's just always, I try not to get this way, but it is always just really satisfying to see TCU go in there and just like show them, remind them, like, oh wait, hold on, this is who you are. When you talk about who's fraudulent in this matchup, it's nice for TCU to go in and show them, oh no, this is the team that's actually smoke and mirrors. This is the team that's actually getting talked up when they're not actually anything.
Yeah, it's the same story. They mixed it up. They got the teams mixed up. Like, and I got caught up in it too. By about the middle of the week, there was so much talk about Texas that I was like, man, I picked TCU and I was fine picking them. But I was like, am I missing something here? But it's the same story. Like, they beat K-State and everybody just, like, they win one game, whether it was Tyrone Swoops beating Notre Dame or Sam Ehlinger and that Texas team beating a beat-up Georgia team, or not even winning any game, but like hanging with Bama and probably should have beat them at home early in the season. And then like a couple weeks later, they lose to Texas Tech, and it's just, oh, well, Hudson Card, what are you going to do? He's just a bus driver. Quinn Ewers didn't complete a pass in the first quarter yesterday. His first completion was early in the second quarter, and it was to Xavier Worthy on a little bubble screen. Like, it's hard to describe. It's the same thing. Time's a flat circle. 8-4, 7-5. Occasionally, maybe they'll pull off a few big wins and make a Big 12 title game. But like, this is who they are. And I don't know, maybe Sark turns it around. I know, again, they're recruiting at an even better level than they ever have. But again, like, national stage, and I'm not going to pick on everybody, but like the Texas 247 staff, which they do a good job. I looked at their predictions page. Everybody picked Texas. And that's not super unusual for like an insider kind of site like that. But it wasn't even like somebody had it 38-35. It was 2 or 3 scores. They just thought this was going to be a coronation. And, well, it wasn't. But good luck to you.
The 7-point line was wild to me, like, from the jump. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, and Joel Anderson, who's a TCU grad, on Twitter made the point of like, oh wait, y'all can't be telling me that Vegas was swindling people out of their money, putting money down on a fraudulent team. There's no way that was happening, right? But the fact that they opened as 7-point favorites, and then I think it got down to 6.5 at one point in the weekend. Yeah, then it got back up to 7.
Yeah.
And depending on where you looked, it was 7.5. And I'm just like, what? And the fact is, Texas scored on offense fewer points than they were favored to win by. Like, and it was again, shout out Shahan. I was talking to him last week, and he was like, "Did no one watch Texas play Iowa State?" Did no one watch that game? He's like, I feel like I'm the only. What I was talking to him, he's like, I feel like I'm the only person who watched that game, and it really does feel like I think everybody's opinion of Texas was that they was based on the Alabama game, and particularly the one quarter of Alabama where Quinn Ewers was playing, and then the Oklahoma game. Well, Alabama is still very good, still a top 10 team, absolutely. But they're not the level of Alabama that they have been historically under Nick Saban, particularly on the offensive line. And Oklahoma's like mid this year, and maybe
they just lost to West Virginia. I mean, they might not make a bowl game,
right? UConn is bowl eligible, and Oklahoma is not. This is the world that we live in, y'all. Like, kick your feet up, like, and relax. Like, this is great. But it is. So, but those were the games that people were like, and then the K-State game, to your point, last week, it was like, okay, like they went out against a top 20 team and like took it to them. Ignore the fact that like K-State like was in position for a game-winning drive late in that game, and that Texas really had a lot of trouble closing out games over the course of the whole season. It was mind-boggling to me that they were. If they'd been favored by 3, I would have been like, okay, they're at home. TCU has not done a lot to like instill confidence in people that they're like a dominant team. Okay, fine, I get that. Yeah. Favored by a full 7 points, over a top 4 team in the country. When like your best win is on the road against a K-State team where you held on to. And maybe this all like we could be eating a whole lot of crow in 3 weeks if the results of the next 2 weeks play out where Texas does sneak into the Big 12 title game and they come in with revenge on their minds and they take it to TCU. That could 100% happen. And like we can sit here and eat crow when that happens. But I don't see how this team, their DNA is any different, certainly any better than it's been at any point since during the Tom Herman era, during the Charlie Strong era, during the late years of Matt Brown, right? To your point, they're recruiting better. They're recruiting as well or better than Tom Herman at his height. They're recruiting better than Charlie ever did, right? And they're recruiting of a level that they were like they're in the peak Mac Brown years. Great. Awesome. Again, we see them do that on a routine basis, just like we see Texas A&M do that on a routine basis. At some point, you got to develop that talent and you got to put that talent in position to succeed. And until you prove that you can do that, and I think proving that you can do that means you win an outright Big 12 title and you put together multiple double-digit win seasons, I think you resign yourself to being this, to having people think of you this way, thinking of you of being fraudulent, of being just a big name brand. And I'm nervous for them when they go to the SEC. Like Oklahoma, I'm not crazy about where they're at under Brent. But Oklahoma, I've at least seen in recent history that shows, okay, like there's a blueprint where they can get things right and they can be competitive. Like they can be of a level with the other teams they're going to be facing. Texas, I think, is going to be a Texas A&M or lower level team in the SEC in terms of like what they're able to put out. I would. I'm not saying I would love to be proven wrong because I would I'm not going to say that I would enjoy watching Texas do well, but I'm open to being proven wrong. But like, they're itching to jump to a league that they are not ready to jump to, and it's nice to send both them and Oklahoma off this way. Just fun, just a fun time.
It is nice, and there's 2 more games left in the regular season at Baylor this weekend. TCU has a chance to get to 11-0. Pretty incredible stuff in year 1 of Sonny Dykes era. Matt, thank you as always. This is the Locked On Horned Frogs. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.